All right, we be live. Hello, everyone. We're here with John Aziz. Hi, John.
Hi, Armin. Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, thanks. I was so happy that you agreed to come to our show on Atheist Republic. I was actually surprised and I'm so grateful because I really want to have more conversations like this with people that have unique views. And you, as a Palestinian activist, have some views that has gotten you in a lot of trouble with a lot of people. You're getting a lot of hate and attacks. So I was wanting to bring you here and introduce you to our audience, introduce people to your work. Oh, and actually, I have to share your Twitter account. Is that the best place where people can find you? I could put that.
Yeah, you can read my Twitter account. I've got articles in the Atlantic, Foreign Policy magazine, Quillette, the Dispatch.
Oh,
so quite a few of fairly well-known websites talking about my history as a Palestinian and talking about my views on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But it's really a pleasure to talk to your community because I'm an atheist myself. I don't know if I really qualify as an ex-Muslim. I'm certainly a non-Muslim or an atheist of Muslim origin. My family's large parts of my family, not all of my family. I have multiple religions in my family, but large parts of my family are Muslim. So yeah, I do have something in common with ex-Muslims. What I don't have in common is actually practicing the religion and actually leaving the religion. I was, my mother is from a Christian background, so I was always able to kind of fall back on that because I wasn't particularly interested in either religion, but secularism is much more accepted in the British Christian background as opposed to a Palestinian Muslim background.
Right. So as a Palestinian atheist, do you get more in trouble for your views regarding Israel, or have you gotten any pushback for your atheism, or is it mostly because of your which one you don't really talk much about your atheism, so I'm assuming obviously you're getting a lot more hate.
I certainly talk more about my views about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and right. I certainly get more pushback for that. I think that the situation might be quite different if I was in Palestine itself, because obviously I reside outside Palestine, where it's completely normal and acceptable to be secular and to be non-religious. If I was living inside Palestine, I think it's quite plausible I would receive more pushback. But
I think you would get still in Palestine, you will still get more pushback for some of your pro-Israeli. We will get into those details on how regarding your views regarding Israel. But I've been to Palestine, right? I've been to the West Bank, and I met a woman there who was an atheist. She was my tour guide, and she had hijab on. Not because of the society, but because of her family. So she was a hijabi atheist, right? And she took me to a bar, and I didn't believe. I was shocked to know that there is a bar, and we drank alcohol. I had alcoholic drinks with an atheist hijabi in Palestine while the azan was playing. So I mean, there are atheists there, and basically all the other Palestinians at my table there that we were there with, they were all atheists. So this was like okay.
I mean, Palestine is a country like any other. Palestinians are complex humans, just like they would be in any other country. So of course, there are always going to be complexities. It's very interesting to see how that manifests on the ground, though. So that is a really interesting story. Really interesting.
I mean, to be fair, she did tell me that many times when she takes the taxi to the bar, the taxi driver curses her or insults her for going to this horrible, sinful place, that is the bar. So the bar gets a lot of attacks. The bars, like the people who go there, are sometimes demonized for going there. So there's that side of it as well. So yeah, but the fact that there is a bar in Palestine, that was shocking to me.
This was in the West Bank and not Gaza.
Oh, of course. Oh my God. Yes.
I think would probably have a hard time running an illicit bar in Gaza than in the West Bank,
no.
for sure.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of anti-Israeli Palestinians in the West Bank that I talk to, some of them actually are scared of people in Gaza. Like they think, like even the Palestinians in the West Bank consider Palestinians in Gaza to be too radical. So, I mean, yeah.
I tell you what, in the current polling, it's quite interesting to notice that the views in Gaza on questions like would you support a two-state solution, should there be coexistence between Palestine and Israel, the views in Gaza are probably more moderate at this point than the views in the West Bank somehow.
I wouldn't say it's moderate. I would still think like you get more radicalism from Gaza. It's just that the Gazan people are paying a heavier price right now for not having a solution. Right. So they are more desperate for a solution. It's not that they're not less radical. I think people in Gaza, because of poverty, because of the situation that they're dealing with, they're more radical. But because the consequences of not having a solution is felt a lot more by them. That's why their opinion polls might suggest that they're more interested in some sort of solution.
Reality is a great force for de-radicalization. Once you have to taste the consequences of your own actions, that's where people often do become less radical in their views.
Right. So can you tell our audience, because we didn't even, I wanted to start with this. Can you tell the audience your background, who you are, what are your views? Because the idea, like I saw some people in the live chat or from the beginning when I said like a Palestinian maybe supporting Israel or not, like we don't know, we're going to discover here. But some people said in the live chat, impossible, like as if there's no such thing. I mean, we have Zaid sometimes on live chat. He's a Palestinian. I don't know if he's here or not. And he's very aggressively like a self-proclaimed Zionist and a Palestinian living in Jordan, right? So I don't know why people are saying impossible that such a thing could possibly exist. But your views are actually a lot more complicated. Let's get into the details of it. So explain to us.
I'm a British Palestinian. I was born in the UK. I have a Palestinian father who was born in the West Bank in the 1960s, and he left Palestine originally to study physics because he was a physicist. He was, he was very much Palestinian. He had strongly pro-Palestine views. My views are sort of tempered by watching for the entirety of my lifespan the failure of the peace process and the failure of the war process in terms of Hamas's attempts to push Israel into radical solutions, like for example, from the river to the sea. So I have seen these ideologies deploy, be tested by time and events, and I've seen the impact that this has had on Palestinians, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. And I'm deeply frustrated with the efforts of particularly Hamas. I think their ideology is bankrupt. I think their efforts on the ground have just led to complete destruction of Gaza. And that's led me to the position where I think that both Palestinian nationalism, and Zionism and Zionist Israelis need to figure out how to peacefully coexist together. And I don't think either side's going anywhere. I don't think either side is illegitimate. I don't think either side should be delegitimized. I think that we should try to find constructive ways for Palestinians and Israelis to get along and to coexist. And I would underline and say that I don't agree with military occupation. I don't want Israel to dominate Palestine. I don't want Israel to subjugate Palestinians. I want Palestinians and Israelis to coexist in two separate countries as equal human beings.
Okay, so I already know these things, but for clarification for people who might not know you, you condemn Hamas. You consider them to be a terrorist group.
Absolutely.
You support Israel's right to exist.
Yes.
And Israel's right to and Israel's right to defend itself, I'm assuming?
Israel has a right to defend itself. Palestinians also have a right to defend themselves, but Israel certainly does have a right to defend itself.
Defend themselves against what, Palestinians?
Well, theoretically, but that's not an endorsement of terrorism against Israelis. But that's a statement that all people have a right to defend themselves. The right to defend yourself is not predicated on being Israeli or being Palestinian. It's a right that is universal to human beings.
Yes, right. They have the right to defend themselves, but the threat against Palestinians is Hamas. So if the Palestinians want to exercise the right to defend themselves, they have to fight Hamas. Right?
I would suggest that one of the solutions that could have been, put in place previous to October the 7th that would have prevented this war would indeed have been Palestinians removing Hamas from power. Now, unfortunately, it's very difficult as Palestinians if Hamas have all the guns that have been supplied to them by the Iranian regime, and Palestinians, civilians who are not Hamas and who are against Hamas, have sticks and stones. What can they do? They can non-violently protest against Hamas, and they there was a "We Want to Live" movement in Gaza. They tried to assert themselves against Hamas's ideology. Unfortunately, Hamas was dominant.
I understand that it's I understand that's an impossible task, but I'm just saying, like, when we say Palestinians have the right to defend themselves, I just want to make it clear that if they were ever able to exercise that right, they should exercise it against Hamas, because the threat to Palestinians comes from within; it doesn't come from Israel.
I would certainly think along those lines, that Hamas practically has been more of a threat to Palestinians than Israel, simply because Israel will only come in, right? Israel will only come in as a result of Hamas taking actions that will start a war. So, yes, Palestinians do die as a result of Israel's actions, but Palestinians die following Hamas starting a war. So I would certainly be of the perspective that Hamas and its ideology is an incredible threat to Palestinians, and Palestinians should reject Hamas, and Palestinians should say that Hamas should not be the leaders of Gaza after this war. And that's that's very strongly, that's my position.
But so we agree on that. I just think that I don't even consider Israel to be a threat to Palestine at all. I think Israel, like, it's not like a secondary threat. It's not a threat at all. Israel is a potential blessing to Palestine if so many Palestinians were not a threat to the existence of Israel. Like, if this toxic ideology did not exist in Palestine, then Israel would be the greatest opportunity as a neighbor to the Palestinian people, a country that you could trade with, Israel itself, the existence of Israel is not a threat to Palestinians. Palestinians have the Palestinians who chose Hamas and Palestinians who are working with Hamas or PLO before them. They brought this upon themselves. So I also don't call what Israel is doing a military occupation, because I see it more as Israel, everything they're doing in the West Bank and Gaza, as Israel just defending itself. Like, if you do want to call it a military occupation, because that has like a negative, it seems like we are condemning it when we're calling it a military occupation, but everything I'm seeing Israel is doing is something that is doing by necessity, because it's constantly under attack and is constantly attempting to defend itself. That's why I just don't know if I should. I don't know if we should call it an occupation. The fact is that go on.
I think Israel is a spectrum, and I think that there are forces in Israel that are very moderate and very secular, and I think that Palestinians would do very well to try and find an opportunity to make peace with those forces. On the other hand, I think there are also forces in Israel that are quite expansionist and do view Palestinians as illegitimate. And essentially the argument that comes up is you'll get Israelis saying, go back to Jordan, Go back to Egypt. That's where you belong. Palestine and Palestinians are not really a nationality. And that's that's something I've experienced myself on Twitter, and engaging with Israelis. There is an end to the Israeli society which is not particularly friendly to Palestinians, and maybe we can argue about whether that end of the Israeli society would have been pacified by Hamas not existing. But I think sometimes what you get in conflicts is you get the most extreme and radical elements on both sides reinforcing one another. So that what motivates Israelis to vote for Ben-Gvir or Smotrich? It could be the most extreme elements in Palestinian society. And what do Hamas use to motivate Palestinians to delegitimize Zionism and to delegitimize Israelis in Israel? It can be the most extreme elements in Israeli society. So I think it's incredibly important to underline that there is shades of gray and good and bad on both sides. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find the people on both sides who want to live in peace together and who want to have reconciliation and who are not going to be dishonest about what's happened in the past and who are going to want to build and who are going to want to improve things. And I think that's the way forward, and that's what we need to encourage and build upon.
Well, I mean, every country has its fair share of like radicals and crazy people. Obviously, it just seems like when we get to Israel, we always are more interested into going into finding their crazy radicals and trying to. I mean, you're not doing that, but they're trying to attribute them to the entirety of the country, right?
Right.
However, so, but when it comes to, unfortunately, when it comes to West Bank and Gaza, it's not like Israel or Canada or United States or South Korea where they have some radicals. It just seems like the vast majority of the population supports a terrorist group and supports, like, I don't know if you saw the polls, the support for October 7th is huge in Gaza and in the West Bank, like one of the greatest acts of terrorism in our lifetime. There's support for that. Like, you don't see this level of support for such violent, barbaric acts in other places. And I mean, if you go to Israel, like I've been both to Israel and Palestine. If you go to Israel, you find plenty of people and plenty of ideologies and plenty of systems and philosophies and methods offered and pushed for that will bring both Israel and Palestine prosperity and peace and security, right? Yeah, you're going to find the fascists as well. You're going to find the radicals and the racists as well. But you have plenty to work with in Israel if you wanted peace. But it's hard to find that in Palestine. Like in Palestine, if you go there, both West Bank and Gaza, people just accepting the existence of Israel. There are people who are willing to let their children die, but not see an Israel exist. They're willing to like give up everything. Like if it's a choice between having peace, but also having Israel, and then not having peace but not accepting Israel, they would choose the second option. They would choose like, no, let me have misery, let me have suffering, let me see the death of my children. That's fine, as long as I don't have to accept Israel existing. That's not a fringe view. That is like the most common view. Would you disagree?
I think that there is certainly an issue in Palestine with radicalization and with radical Islamism and with those things becoming normalized. And I as an atheist myself, I'm pretty immune to that stuff. I mean, on the other hand, you do have people at the PFLP who are as radical as Hamas, and they're not Islamists. They're actually atheists. They're communists. But I think communism or Marxism, Leninism is ultimately in its own way. It's sort of another kind of radical religion. But I think that you do raise important points, and I think if we want to have peace, we need to look at trying to lift up the most moderate and the most secular people as leaders, rather than looking at lifting up the most radical and the most extreme.
How could you do that? They will straight up get murdered. Like, imagine if you have a population that the vast majority of them want Israel to they want to annihilate Israel. They want to kill every single Jew that they could get their hands on, right? And then the people who are like, yeah, maybe let's not do that. Maybe let's like push for something more reasonable that will get us actually, well, that we would bring us a future that we could kiss our children goodnight without worrying about bombs falling on our head. Maybe let's go for that one. If you're the minority, and if you say that, I mean, you've been called a traitor for your views plenty of times. Am I right? Right. So,
Right.
and you, yeah, I mean, but if you,
I'm still persisting. I'm still persevering. And the people who are dreaming of a better future, the people who are dreaming of a potential future where Israel and Palestine live side by side as prosperous, successful countries, we need to keep putting one foot in front of the next. We need to keep persevering, and we need to keep arguing for the positive view of the future rather than for the negative view of the present, because we know all about the problems of the present, right? And you're absolutely right about the issues. I agree with the overwhelming majority of the issues that you're raising here. They are serious problems for Palestinians and for any future Palestinian movement. And of course, the most secular leaders oftentimes do end up getting assassinated. I've grown up watching people, even with Mahmoud Abbas, who perhaps is not the most secular and perhaps not the most moderate. He's substantially more moderate than Hamas. He's substantially more secular than Hamas. But I've watched many Palestinians saying that Mahmoud Abbas is a traitor, right? Even there was even a time where I've heard people say Yasser Arafat was a traitor. So look, radicalization and extremism and this extreme view that the Israelis are completely wrong and Palestinians are completely right and all of the land belongs to Palestine and all of the land belongs to Islam, right? These are views that we are going to have to contend with in the coming years. But
there
are realistic ways which Western countries and which the more moderate countries in the Middle East can uplift moderate and secular leadership in Palestine.
But how would you do that? Like, if you're saying, like, with this population, with this group of people, again, I don't want to generalize. I know some Palestinians that have different views, right? But I'm talking about the vast majority. You're like, oh, let's go pick up a leader that is moderate or secular or doesn't have radical views. How? I mean, even the PLO, even if you go from Fatah, right? They are also radicals in their own, based on our standards. But if you bring them to Gaza, they will be murdered by Hamas as they were before, right? Like, you can't. That's not even enough moderate. That is not it. That is not even not radical enough. They are radicals. The people who are in charge in West Bank, they are still radicals, but they're not radical enough for Hamas. To the point that they're refusing to come rule over Gaza because they know they will be shot inside. They will not survive. If you put anybody in Gaza in charge of not even in charge of like the military effort, not even in charge of like the government, but even in small positions that has nothing to do with being opposed to Israel or not, as long as they're not the radicals, Hamas will come and they will kill them as in their sleep. Who
gave Hamas the ability to do that? How did Hamas? This is not Hamas's.
The Islamic Republic covered on.
Hamas's ability to do this didn't just emerge from nowhere randomly. Hamas's ability to do this, Hamas's ability to exert their will and to impose their extreme views in Gaza came from them being given power by external groups, specifically the IRGC, Iran, and Qatar, right? So what if Hamas can be uplifted by groups like that who have negative intentions, who want war with Israel ultimately, who believe in jihad, who believe in destroying Israel, right? By jihad, right? If groups that want to do that can exert themselves on the Palestinian people, then the groups who want peace outside Palestine can also.
The Palestinian people want that. The Palestinian people want Hamas. even without the support of, first of all, you cannot stop the support of Islamic Republic of Iran. Maybe you could stop the Qatari support, but not the Islamic Republic of Iran. But even if you stop that, that's what the Palestinian people want. Even if they don't have weapons, if you put some moderate, let's say we send a moderate leader to Gaza and be like, hey, here's your new leader. This person recognizes Israel's right to exist. Okay, let's see if they will survive like 2 hours. They will not, even without weapons, people will use their teeth and nails to kill that person without weapons.
It's not just about weapons, although Hamas's access to weapons is an incredibly important factor in how they've managed to impose themselves on the Palestinian population. But radicalization and the radicalization of the Palestinian people is not indefinite. It's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not permanent.
Right.
It depends.
It's not permanent, but
it depends upon the educational system. For example, these things would need to be reformed. And if you had a secular, moderate Palestinian leader over Gaza and over the West Bank, right? I'm talking really secular, beyond what Fatah offers, right? I think that would be an incredible opportunity for de-radicalization of the entire society, because the status quo is not sustainable. The status quo, where we have a terrorist attack by Hamas, and then we have a war, and then Gaza gets destroyed, and then we rebuild, and Hamas comes back, and it radicalizes more people. I don't think that's sustainable. We have to look at real solutions, real viable solutions that are going to de-radicalize the situation and de-escalate the situation and make it possible for the two populations to come together and live in peace.
Julia is saying we don't know what Gazans really want. Unfortunately, we have scientific polls that have been conducted, and they are very credible sources that shows that they not only support Hamas.
I would slightly agree with Julia. I'd also slightly agree with Ahmed Fouad al-Khatib, who says things along these lines, that there are a lot of forces in Gaza who hate Hamas. They hate living under this radical regime, and it's large chunks of the population. But they are scared. They are scared of Hamas and PIJ because Hamas and PIJ have the weapons. And they, I know people in Gaza who have been tortured by Hamas, right? I know people in Gaza who have been tortured by Hamas, and it scares people, and it scares people to not even to go out and protest. It scares people even from expressing their true opinion. So I think that that's a valid point, and I think
it is. Well, I mean, but a lot is still a minority. Okay, so for example, let's say 70% of the population supports Hamas. Okay, that is a majority. 30% of the people will still get you a lot of people. So these are not if I say the majority of people in Gaza support Hamas, and you say, well, there's a lot of Palestinians who are anti-Hamas, these two are true at the same time, because 30%.
I have heard. I've heard from a Hamas leader in recent weeks that Hamas themselves are estimating their support in Gaza to be 50-50. 50% against, 50% in favor. And
okay.
I
don't know if
other times it has been 30 in favor of Hamas. But
okay,
Hamas,
I've seen a poll. I've seen scientifically. I don't know if Hamas doesn't have their own academic scientifically collected data and analyzed with correct methodology to come up with conclusions. But again, these polls that are taken, you don't have to tell people who you are. So these polls are collected in a way that is not a threat to the Palestinians. If you think that they're scared to say what they want, the polls are conducted in a way that is pretty reliable. And again, it's not just the support. Hold on, let me make this point. It's not just the support for Hamas. The support for October 7th attack that I think it was about above 70%, if I remember correctly. Support for the October 7th attack was, but let's say you're right. So I would say like 70%, but let's say 50-50. 50-50 is crazy. Okay, 50-50 is crazy. Half of your population supporting like an attack on the greatest terrorist attack that we've seen in our lifetime on Israel. That is insane. But let's say so between 50 and 70%, right? That is still a huge number of people that are supporting terrorism. You cannot put a leader on these people that is moderate, secular. There's no safe way for you to do that. They will get eliminated. So you want to de-radicalize this population. So your first suggestion was to just give them a leader, but if it's not a leader that does not represent the ideology of the people, that's not going to work, because they're just going to reject that. We saw what happened in Afghanistan when you try to force a leadership upon a people that does not reflect the ideology and the philosophy on the people of the ground. It will have an allergic reaction with it, and eventually it will throw that away. So you can't fix this from the bottom up. You can't fix this by saying that, oh, here's you guys are supporting radicalism and terrorism, but your leader doesn't. This leader will guide you the way, and you guys will be de-radicalized. It's not that simple. So you're saying that maybe like changing the education system, like this will take a multi-generational approach, like, because the idea that Israel shouldn't exist, even among the people in Palestine. So here's another problem. Even in Palestine, even in West Bank, the people who don't support terrorism and radicalism, some of which we will call the moderates, even they don't agree with Israel existing. Even the people in Palestine were like, yeah, we shouldn't kill Israeli civilians. Yeah, we shouldn't be doing terrorist attacks. They're like, okay, should Israel have the right to exist? Like, no, we should never accept Israel existing. Maybe, but the method is not killing civilians, but Israel should go away. Israel should not exist. So that's the moderates. Okay, that's the moderates. How do you change that if we cannot force a leadership upon people that does not reflect their view? How would you de-radicalize them? What's your solution?
The only solution for bad ideas is good ideas. I think, and that maybe that's an aphorism, but I think the people with the good ideas need to be given opportunities. But I think, yeah, it's not so much about necessarily imposing a leader on Palestine. I think potentially you could do it through democracy, where the extremists are banned from standing and only moderates can stand, and therefore you would get the most amenable moderate. So but look at what the United States managed to achieve in Japan and Germany after World War II. Those countries were extremely radicalized and extremely, violently opposed to America and to democracy and to the modern world. And they've been radicalized by Hirohito and he who shall not be named. And I think that illustrates that it is possible to have de-radicalization in a country that has lost the war and therefore needs a new government and needs rebuilding. And I think Japan and Germany today are incredibly successful examples of that process. And there was democracy in both of those places. Yes, it was a limited democracy. The equivalent of Hamas not able to stand for office. You'd have to have the party options under a Palestinian democracy should be a center-left party, a center-right party, and then maybe a liberal party. I think that would ultimately be the
okay.
choice.
Let's copy Japan then. Okay, Japan was extremely radical. They were suicide bombers before Muslims were suicide bombers, right?
Yeah,
and they were willing to fight to death, fight till annihilation, and they were willing to keep going and continue the war no matter what the consequences are.
That's radicalization.
Yes, they were completely against submitting. Okay, what changed their mind? Tell me, what changed their mind?
The most extreme defeat possible, including the usage of nuclear weapons. But I think I have to be, and I should be careful to not endorse and condone war and violence, because I'm a man of peace. I'm a very, very, very peaceful person.
But that's what it takes.
Palestinians in Gaza have experienced incredible violence against them, and incredible violence against their city and against their country. And I think that yes, we are going to be looking at in the coming months and years, Palestinians are certainly going to be looking at a change in perspective, because I don't think, as I keep saying, I don't think that the strategy or ideology of Hamas has brought us anywhere good. It hasn't created anything wonderful, anything even you know, if you look at Gaza today, it's not even half decent. It's awful. So I think Palestinians in Gaza are going to have a look at what their options are.
But you say they have to, okay?
Okay,
but just wishing them
I'll go on like this.
Looking at, okay, but this is just wishful thinking. If we go by your examples, and I will add a couple of examples, okay? The way to, based on your own suggestion, defeating them to the point of absolute destruction, to the point of destroying and crushing your enemy and taking all hope from victory away from them, seems to be the only thing that has worked historically. Like, if your enemy still has a hope for victory, they're not going to get de-radicalized. You have to crush them in a way that they understand that there is no winning. So if you want to replicate the model of Germany and Japan, then Israel should be doing a lot more than what it is doing right now in Gaza when it comes to crushing its enemy. Like, it needs to go a lot more heavy-handed if you want to replicate those results.
Palestinians in Gaza have already suffered a hell of a lot. I would be.
It's not even close.
I would be tremendous.
It's not even close.
I think
it's not even close.
I think what we have to look at here is that Hamas is going to be defeated. Hamas is going to be removed from the picture. I have little.
Hamas is not going to get defeated. Hamas is going to lose its military capabilities, which it already has, right? But its ideology is going to grow. So there's two strengths. You have Hamas's hard power and its soft power. Its hard power is being taken away right now, to the point of like losing it almost completely, right? They might be able to rebuild soon, but its soft power has increased in the past couple of months significantly. So you are going to be able to take away Hamas's ability to do military operations, but Hamas is not going to go away. Hamas is going to continue. Hamas's ideology is within the Palestinian people. Okay, so Hamas is not. That's the problem. They have the hearts and minds of the Palestinian people. So you cannot destroy Hamas unless you destroy all of the Palestinian people, or unless you change their mind. But how can you change their mind? How can you change their mind if they still have hope for victory? Every single war ends when one or both sides come to the conclusion that fighting will not bring them victory.
I mean, do you think Israel is going to let up on Hamas? Do you think that Hamas is going to get a real opportunity to rebuild in Gaza? Because I think that's pretty unlikely. I think that Israel is very determined to see it through in terms of destroying Hamas's capabilities.
Okay, Hamas's capabilities, sure. Okay, but Hamas lives inside the mind of every single man, woman, and child. Well, not every single, like a vast majority of men, women, and children that don't have even weapons in their hand. Even if you kill every single Hamas operative right now, a Hamas combatant right now, every single one of them, the civilians of Palestine, they have Hamas ideology. As soon as the children grow up, as soon as like every single teen, what are you going to do? They carry the virus of Hamas inside their mind. Maybe you could change them, even if the branding completely gets destroyed. Okay, whatever fills that vacuum is going to be Hamas 2.0. Maybe it will have a different name. Maybe it will be Islamic Jihad. Maybe it will have a new name that they come up with. But it's going to be the exact same ideology. This does not have a military solution. There's two solutions. Okay, either you go for changing their ideology, and I don't know how you're going to do that. But if it has a military solution, then you have to replicate what you saw in Germany and Japan. You have to, and here's the problem. Here's another problem. Okay, when it comes to defeating the communists or the Nazis or the Japanese, their philosophy was of this world. What they were aspiring for, what their dreams and goals were of this world. So it's true that the Japanese were radical and the Germans were radical, but if you kill their children, they will go cry about it. They will go, if they see their houses and their family being destroyed, they will see that as the worst possible outcome. You could get them to submit by crushing their hopes for a victory in this world. But here's the problem in Gaza. You're dealing with a different kind of radical ideology that is not like Nazism, it's not like the Japanese, it's not like the communists, because they see martyrdom as a blessing. They're not fighting for this world, they're fighting for the next one. They have mothers in Palestine give birth with the hope that they die in battle. They come and claim that I'm having as many children as possible so that they could die by Israel, so that more people around the world hate Israel. I heard mothers from Palestine proud of being factory babies that will die, that will make more people end up hating Israel. That's an ideology that even if you crush them in this world, they still think that there's a chance for victory, because they don't see victory limited to this life. They see victory in that even if we don't win in this life, we will win in the next one. So if you want to defeat them, you have to crush them even harder than what you did with the Japanese and the Germans. If you are, again, so that's why I don't see when people say like, well, with the radicalized people in Germany and Japan, first of all, the situation, the ideology is very different. Two, well, then are you going to do that? I mean, Israel is not even being heavy-handed enough if you want to replicate that. So none of this is like a false analogy, in my opinion. What do you think?
Well, I think where I come in and what my approach is, right? My approach is about trying to advocate. My approach is a hopeful, optimistic approach. I'm trying to advocate to get people on side for a better future, right? To get people on side for, Gaza can be an incredibly rich, incredibly successful, incredibly happy, incredibly safe and peaceful and secure part of a Palestinian state. So I'm personally pushing the side of optimism and peace and freedom.
How?
Vegetarianism.
To be optimistic, but if to be optimistic, I need to see a how.
Economic development and de-radicalization is my answer, but that will come after the war. And you are right to raise potential stumbling blocks for how we could get back down into this quagmire, and it would be Hamas 2.0. It would be the Hamas ideology continuing on burning inside the people and it returning. And I think it is absolutely reasonable to be concerned that may take place, and we have to take as many measures as possible on the pathway there to avoiding that. Now, I am not the only actor involved here. I'm me. I have my views, and I have my positive, hopeful, optimistic vision for the future. I think on the ground, but I'm not the one fighting this war, and I wouldn't want to be. As I say, I'm a man of peace. But the people fighting the war on the ground, the Israelis, they certainly have a very, very strong vested interest in not getting sucked back into this quagmire. So I am relatively confident that Hamas will be destroyed. And although, as you correctly say, that you can't really destroy an ideology, you can destroy a military fighting force. But I think you
can, but that's not. You can destroy an ideology, but you can't destroy it with bullets.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. But at the same time, I think Israel and Israelis are aware of these risks, that because they're not existential risks to you or me so much as they are to Israeli people, right? Israelis have the strongest interest in not repeating October the 7th and not repeating, the depravity of Hamas terrorism attacks against.
Well, this is a problem for the plan. This is not. It's a bigger problem for Israel, but I think it's a problem for our planet. Like, right. We're not. I don't think like. I'm not supporting Israel just for the sake of Israel. I support Israel for the sake of the world, because there are certain standards and there's certain principles that if we don't stand for when there's the need for it, then those standards are going to be challenged worldwide. Like, I defend every single nation state, not just Israel, but I focus more on Israel because Israel's existence is being challenged more than any other nation state. I support every country's border integrity, every country's right to defend itself, but Israel requires more defending, and if you don't stand for Israel, you're not standing for that principle. So if you don't stand for Israel, you're not standing for any country. And the Jews are the first ones to always be targeted. So if you don't stand for the Jews, you're not standing for humanity. So standing for Jews is for the sake of standing for humanity. Because if that principle, if border integrity, the right to defend itself, defending the very concept of a nation state, if we don't stand for these when they are being challenged, that's the same reason why I support Ukraine's border integrity being challenged by Russia, because this is a global concept that we're defending, not just Ukraine or Israel. So this is I just wanted to add that it's not just Israel. When we're standing for Israel, you have to stand for Israel if you stand for the world. But yeah, go on. So you were saying?
I think that the interests in having Hamas not being able to regenerate, Israel has a very strong interest. But we can talk about the regional interests, right? Jordan doesn't want Hamas to become the dominant force in the region, or even radical Islam, because that would pose a tremendous threat to the government there. The United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. There are plenty of other countries in the region who have a very strong interest in rebuilding Palestine as something completely different from what was in place before. So I think there is a strong alignment of interests here, both with Israel, with regional powers like the ones I mentioned, such as the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. And there's also Europe and countries in the West who don't want to see Palestine and Israel being consumed by religious warfare. So there's
also the Islamic Republic of Iran, who has very much interest in radicalizing Palestinian people and taking advantage. And there's a global attempt. So you're talking about interest being in line. The problem is all of this interest that are all of these people that are interested in peace and stability in Palestine and Israel, they are on the losing side, which is the side that is trying to bring stability. It's hard to bring stability. It's easy to promote instability. Like, you need a lot less energy, resources, wealth, and power to be able to bring instability. And unfortunately, we have the Islamic Republic of Iran and the entire.
It's time to get serious. The people who want stability, the people who want peace, need to get serious, right? And the resources to bring about stability, maybe it is tenfold of what's required to bring about instability. But people who want stability and people who want a future for the Israeli people, for the Palestinian people, for the Middle East, need to be serious about bringing that stability, and need to be serious about challenging the position of Iran.
But they're not serious.
They should be.
But they're not serious.
That's my point.
Here's the thing, because here's the problem. Not only we haven't been successful in attacking this ideology of Hamas inside Gaza. In fact, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been more successful. I should say the Islamic Republic in Iran, not of Iran. Okay, the Islamic Republic in Iran has been more successful, and also the wider Sunni community of people who are trying to be dominate the Islamic Ummah all over the world. So they have been more successful. But not only they have been successful in that area, they have been able to spread this Islamist Marxist ideology in these countries that you want them to be more serious. Because how could you? Yes, the European countries and the North American countries, they have the resources. But again, they have a more and more, their share of the population is anti-Israeli. More and more their share of the population are supporting positions that Hamas would like them to support. So the Islamic Republic of Iran and other Islamic institutions have been able to spread, and also this woke Marxist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonialist organizations have been able to spread this toxic ideology that makes these countries that are supposed to be supporting for peace and stability to be a lot less serious, because these are democracies. They have to reflect what their people want, and we are heading in a direction that a lot of the people do not know that they are spreading an anti-Semitic ideology that is being promoted by both Marxist, woke, leftist, and Islamists. So you say we have to be more serious, but we're moving in the opposite direction. So we cannot just wish these things to existence. So what do we do?
I think that you do raise an important point. I do think that in Western countries we are seeing a resurgence in Marxism, Leninism, and in Islamism, and these doctrines, these ideologies are gaining prominence, and I also find that to be pretty concerning, and I think we're kind of looking at more of a global issue here, because we started this conversation talking about Palestine, talking about the war between Israel and Hamas, and talking about the ongoing issues and my hope for peace, and why I consider myself to be a peace activist in the region. But we're opening up into showing why that issue is a global issue, because it is a matter of global ideology, because the people in Iran and the people with the more radical kind of Islamist flavors of ideology, their ambition doesn't end with Israel and Palestine, right? Their ambition ends in a global caliphate. So I think, and for the Marxist-Leninists, the Marxist-Leninist side, rather than favoring a global caliphate, what they sort of probably favor is kind of global communist revolution. So this issue, it sucked everyone, kind of, it sucks the world into it, right? And I think that again, I come back to saying it's time for people in the West, across the world, if you don't want to live under Islamist authoritarianism, if you don't want to live under communist authoritarianism, if you want to live in, a liberal country where people have equal rights and women have equal rights and people can go outside without hijab or burqa, and you want economic freedom and you want personal freedom and so on and so forth. If you care about your freedoms, it's time to get serious about combating the global ideologies that oppose your freedoms, right? And that is emanating from groups like Hamas and the Islamic Republic in Iran and Hezbollah and people like Vladimir Putin, who are handmaidens to these radical ideologues, sometimes for reasons of convenience. But we have to be serious. We have to be serious about this. This is an ideological struggle for global control, and they are trying to take our freedom. That is the truth. That is the truth. There are tyrannical, authoritarian forces in the world. There are tyrannical, authoritarian forces in the world who want to take our freedom, who want to take the freedom not only of the people in Israel and people in Palestine who dream of freedom. They want to take the freedom of British people, of French people, of Russians, of Americans. So it is time to be serious about these issues.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I completely agree. I just don't know how to how do we do that? Because we cannot, again, we can say that it's time to get serious, but then when it doesn't, then what do we do about it? Let me actually read 2 super chats, and then I'm going to ask you another question. Bar from Israel sending us 6 shekels saying, know of any way to impose change without force? Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, you need force behind. You cannot just tell people, hey, guys, have you considered being nicer? Have you guys considered being not radical? Like, oh, they're like, oh, thank you. I know nobody ever offered us that option. Like that, it doesn't work. Like I think the people who are thinking that force is the only way and we can't, talking about changing people's ideology doesn't work. We only have to use military. I think that doesn't make any sense to me, because you cannot shoot ideas away. But I also don't agree with people who think like, oh, let's just de-radicalize them instead of like occupying or like using military force. Like, I mean, look at every single time this has worked. It was a mix of both fighting ideologically and military. You cannot just ask nicely people.
The way I look at it is that extremism and radicalism will inevitably bring confrontation, right? You will. Change may require force. I think historically that's what the evidence shows. But the nature of an extremist or radicalized ideology means that it will inevitably bring some sort of confrontation upon itself. So of course we're looking at that. Of course we're looking at that. That's what Hamas does. It brings confrontation, and with confrontation will eventually come change. But at the same time, you do have to have someone sitting here talking about alternatives to the Hamas approach. So you need both. I think the confrontation is inevitable because of the nature of the radical ideology, but you have to have an alternative to that as well.
And somebody, Terrell is sending in the live chat, the U.S. relied on Shinto belief in emperor as God to de-radicalize Japan by forcing Hirohito to endorse U.S. reforms equivalent to having Muhammad endorse Islam. I think what Terrell is getting into is de-radicalizing Nazi ideology or whatever people were believing at that point in Japan is not. It's not an ideology as deep-rooted as Islam. Like, it's one thing, like how Germans had become Nazis for less than one generation, right? I mean, ancient Shinto ideologies or whatever the Japanese believed during World War II, that was a new version of this, whatever cult they were in. Like, it wasn't an ancient ideology that existed in Japan. It wasn't as deep-rooted. So de-radicalizing Japanese people and Germans is a lot easier than de-radicalizing an ideology that is so deep-rooted within your culture and your history. Like, you cannot just get rid of Islam in the same way that you could get rid of Nazism, communism, or the Japanese radicalism that they had at that time. What do you think about
that? I certainly wouldn't advocate for getting rid of Islam. I'd advocate getting rid of the extreme. I would. You're entitled to that, but I think realistically there are 2 billion Muslims in the world, right? There are 2 billion Muslims in the world, and I think that realistically we have to figure out how we can live in peace with each other, because I don't think Islam's going anywhere. I think the good thing about Islam is that it is quite multifactorial, and there are lots and lots and lots and lots of different versions and potential different versions. And I think it's possible for there to be such a thing as Islamic Reformation. And maybe there are certain passages in the Quran that would seem to forbid that, but there are interpretations of Islam that would allow for that. So I think we have to look at Islam as a spectrum, and there's an end to the spectrum which is kind of endorsing the ideas of IRGC and Hezbollah and Hamas, and that's the problem, right? We don't want that end of the spectrum, but there are potential allies on other ends of the spectrum that could potentially lead an Islamic Reformation, for example. Because I mean, Christianity was a very violent religion for many centuries, and
Christianity is still a violent. Okay, let me tell you what my.
It's less violent.
No, let me tell. Less for sure. Okay, but here's the thing. Reforming Islam is exactly why we're here to begin with, right? We have radical versions of Islam because people attempted to reform Islam. Trying to make Islam more pragmatic and less violent is what made Islam survive this long for us to have radical versions of it. If we didn't have people trying to reform Islam, we would have gotten rid of Islam a lot sooner than this. So reform is actually not a solution. Reform is the problem. Let me actually address the things that you said. Like you said, we have 2 billion Muslims in the world, and Islam is not going anywhere. Sure, but we aim. They say aim for the stars, land on the moon. When we try to annihilate Islam, that doesn't mean that we think that we will be able to. Just because it's not black and white, right? It's not all or none. We aim for the maximum thing that we could get, and we're good with whatever progress that we are capable of. Like your goals should be a lot more than what you actually are able to achieve, or else you're not going to achieve anything, right? So the fact that Islam is not going anywhere, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be trying to get rid of Islam completely. You should be trying to get rid of Islam completely, and if you get anything less than that, well, it's fine. You'll just take whatever you can get. And then you mentioned that we have to have peace with Muslims and be allies with Muslims. Yeah, I didn't say we should be fighting Muslims. I said we should be fighting Islam. In fact, fighting Islam requires being friends with Muslims, because the only way to fight Islam is to convince Muslims out of it. I'm not saying I'm not advocating for being hostiles with Muslims. I'm promoting hostility against Islam, not Muslims. To be hostile against Islam, you need to be friendly towards Muslims, or else they wouldn't even listen to you for you to be able to change their mind. So I don't see me being anti-Islam completely. How does that in contradiction with peace and being allies? And also, I could be moving in the direction of eradicating Islam and work with Muslims at the same time. Like, in fact, I'm very open about Muslims that I work with that, yeah, I want to destroy your religion completely. You could also be trying to destroy atheism completely. But at this project that we have here, we have shared goals here. That's a different fight that we can fight in a friendly way. I could be trying to destroy Islam. You could try to destroy atheism. But here, there's a project that we have shared interests with each other. Can we work with each other, right? I mean, I'm able to work with you. Are you able? I'm against Islam. I'm against your religion entirely, and I'm able to work with you. So I think that being anti-Islamic completely is not a contradiction with working with people that have different opinions than you. And also, when you say like there's different versions of Islam, Islam is radical to the core. Islam is political to the core. You cannot separate the political and radical nature of Islam from Islam unless you somehow figure out a way to remove Quran. I mean, you can't even remove the authentic hadith, Sahih hadith from Islam. You can't even do that. But even if you are able to do that, as long as the Quran has anything to do with Islam, there is no way for you to remove radicalism from Islam. Islam is anti-woman, anti-peace, anti-democracy, anti-woman, anti-LGBT, anti-every single value that makes society's progress. It's against those to the core. Islam is anti-Jewish to the core. There's no way that you could change Islam unless you say that unless you separate the Quran from Islam. And in fact, we shouldn't be even trying to do that. Islam survives as much as it has because people have tried to reform it. Because Islam is flexible in showing a more peaceful, nice, cute, fluffy version of itself whenever it's in danger. So Islam is, so when you bring an appearance of Islam that is actually more friendly, more moderate, less aggressive, that's only because Islam is weak at that point, and it requires the reformist version of it to show you that side. But once it gets the upper hand, it will feel safe enough to bring its ugly, true nature back to the front. But what you did by trying to reform Islam is that you helped it survive during the time that it was actually the best time to crush it. It's kind of like fighting a dragon and you have injured it. And this dragon has a capability to turn into like a fluffy little cute kitten as soon as it's like fearing that it's dying. And you're right at you have the sword, and now it looks very cute. And you're like, I'm telling you to kill it. It's weak. You're like, no, but it's cute now. It's fine. It's injured. We should take care of it. Like, no. If it heals, it's gonna go back to being a dragon. Now that you've injured it, you have to you have to push the sword right into its heart. Like, don't be fooled by it. And you're like, nope, it's cute now. It's fluffy. I'm not going to hurt a small little kitten. I'm going to walk away. Well, good job. Now it's going to grow back to being back to the dragon that it always was. That's what Islam is. That's why I don't think that you should trust this whole reform narrative. In fact, if you want to replicate what happened to Christianity didn't reform from within. Every time the reform is a defense mechanism. When religions do, because religions don't reform from within. Religions are challenged from outside, and they use the reform tactic as a defense mechanism. If you want to replicate what happened with Christians, then you should be anti-Islamic. because none of the ideas that Christians have that makes their countries great come from Christianity. It comes from secular liberal ideas that come not from the Bible. They come from outside of Christianity. And the Christians reformed, so Christianity did not reform. Christians reformed. So Islam cannot reform. Muslims can reform by having ideas that are less Islamic. If you want to replicate that, then challenge Islam in the same way that the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment challenge Christianity.
Absolutely.
Christianity is not reform. Yeah.
I'm a secular liberal atheist, right? So I'm certainly not coming at this from an Islamic perspective. I absolutely agree with you that we need to challenge Islam from outside, just as we should challenge Christianity, just as we should challenge all religion, because that's if we're atheists, right? And if we want the world to become more atheistic and more humanistic and not less, then we should certainly be strident in our atheism and willing to challenge the views of Christians and Muslims. And I strongly agree with that. I would say realistically, given how numerous Christians and Muslims are, it's quite unlikely that they're ever going to disappear. But that's.
But it's not all or none game. It's not an all or none game. It's not victory unless they all disappear, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think yes, we should be strident in our atheism. We should be challenging to religious people, and we should be willing to go after their doubts and reinforce their doubts, because that's how we became atheists in the first place, with our own doubts and our own questioning of religion. I think ultimately a society that is based upon questioning and is based upon doubt and is based upon trying to find evidence for things and trying to understand things better, I think that's a wonderful thing for that society. I think that societies benefit when scrutiny is an important part of society, and when beliefs are challenged, and that should be normalized. Absolutely, that's very strongly my view. And I think ultimately, if there is going to be a happy, successful, prosperous Palestinian state, that needs to be the norm there, right? We need to be able to challenge people's views, including challenging Islam, including challenging any belief system. That's how societies prosper. That's how societies flourish. They flourish because people can bring scrutiny to things and can ask difficult questions, and that's how you get improvements. If you bring scrutiny to a questionable practice, then that is how you get reform. So that is the right approach to bring scrutiny and to ask difficult questions, and that's absolutely what secularists and humanists and atheists should be doing of all religious people.
So I have some disagreements on something else with you. We'll see. You might call me a radical after I say this, because I recently changed my views on certain topics regarding the two-state solution, and I want to get your opinions on that. But before, let me just highlight two comments. Thank you for the super chat, Carl. Carl is saying, if Muhammad died right before Hijrah, Islam would be pretty peaceful, right? Meccans versus only reform. Well, it would be more like Christianity, because Muhammad and Jesus are kind of similar in the way that they both were rebels against the religious authority at their time. Both challenged the religious order at their time. But Jesus was crucified before he was a rebel that was not successful. The religious authority managed to get him killed. Muhammad, they tried to kill him in Mecca, but he ran away to Medina or Yathrib at the time. And then he had a second period. His rebellion was successful, and Jesus didn't have a time that he was ruling over people. But Muhammad had the first period, which was more like Jesus, and a second period, because they failed at killing him. He actually managed to also have a second period where he was ruling as a religious figure. So it's kind of that's why Islam is more political, because Jesus failed and was crucified, and he didn't get to rule. And Muhammad did not fail, and he get to rule. That's why Islam as an ideology is a lot more political. Thank you for the super chat. And also, Carl is saying many Enlightenment philosophers were not atheists, though. Yeah, that's why I chose my words carefully. I said they were against Christianity or the Christian order at the time. I didn't say they were pro-atheism. So I was pretty careful about how I worded that. So here's my take, and this might sound radical to you, because you're in favor of a two-state solution, right?
I'm in favor of a two-state solution with some caveats. I don't want the Palestinian state to be ruled by Hamas or Hezbollah or any group like that. I want two fairly secular, fairly liberal, fairly modernistic states, Israel and Palestine. Yes.
Okay, and you support Israel as a nation state, but you also support Palestine being a nation state, and you consider yourself a Palestinian nationalist. Would that be fair to say?
If I get called a Zionist, I should equally be called a Palestinian nationalist. Because yes, I think both of those national groups have a claim to self-determination, right? That's essentially that's how you get a country. Is you have a group of people who
but you agree that Palestine is not a country yet. When you say you're a Palestinian nationalist, you mean the nation state that it will one day hopefully become, not that it's right.
I very much hope for a Palestinian state. Yes.
Right. So I used to be favoring the two-state solution. I just couldn't comprehend. I just realized how big of a threat that would be to Israel. Because here's the thing. Here's how, first of all, we cannot have a two-state solution right now, given the ideology that is predominant right now in West Bank and Gaza. If we have a two-state solution right now, we're basically inviting another Islamic Republic right next to Israel. With this current mindset of Palestinian people, if we have a two-state solution today, we're basically creating a Hamas that is now an official government of an independent nation state, that all the military gains that it had in the couple of years before now will be legal. Imagine if you had the West Bank and Gaza under the control of a government that is basically Hamas or Hamas 2.0, but now it's building its military legally under the protection of it being an independent nation state. That is the end of Israel. That is getting very close to the end of Israel, because now all the laws, all the international laws protects this government from being able to build like a strong army with the help of the Islamic Republic of Iran, tanks, helicopters, planes, missiles, and nobody could challenge them. Because they're legally doing that. It has every right to do that, and they're doing that without any Israel having any military observation or any right to be able to go there and stop it or be present to see that what they're doing. And I've been to Tel Aviv, and I've been to the West Bank. It's remarkable how close they are. It's remarkable how fast you could just overwhelm Tel Aviv if you control the West Bank. It's like right now, the Iron Dome can pretty effectively stop the rockets that are coming from Hamas, which are not very advanced rockets, to be fair, right? Even Hezbollah, with its rockets, can overwhelm the Iron Dome. Hezbollah, which is not an official military group of a nation state, where Israel is capable of going in and destroying and taking their many of their ammunition out. But imagine if now West Bank has that. With that proximity to Tel Aviv, they could easily now start gathering all their military forces for the day that they need to attack Tel Aviv. And it's very little that Tel Aviv could do against that. It would be the end of peace for Israeli people. Even if Israel is not destroyed, that would mean constant threat of annihilation, or at least wars for Israel that is a lot more devastating than anything that we have ever seen. So right now, we are incapable of having a two-state solution. Do you agree with that so far, or no?
I think that you raised some very important security concerns that Israel would have with a two-state solution. I also think it's important to address the point that there are already multiple two-state solutions between Israel and other countries, right? Egypt and Israel are two separate states. Jordan and Israel are two separate states, and they're living in peace. So the question becomes, how do you get a situation like that with Palestine? I think the answer that I tend to fall back on is that you would need competent, peaceful Israel. Not necessarily Israel friendly is maybe not the correct word, but Israel respecting Palestinian leadership. You would need a Palestinian leadership that respects Israel's rights as a country.
Well, any other. You're not going to get that. You cannot okay, first of all, again, with just Egypt and Jordan, just like the examples of Germany and Japan, you got that by humiliating these countries with the defeats. Like, if you want to replicate that, that means crushing your enemies, because Egypt and Jordan were convinced that Israel is here to stay, right? First. Two, Egypt and Jordan are countries who are they're independent. They're the nation states. The Islamic Republic in Iran does not have that much influence on them. In fact, they're completely against the Islamic Republic of Iran meddling in that area. Unlike the Hamas, unlike the people who are supporting Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank, who very much appreciate the Islamic Republic support, the Islamic Republic of Iran will be able to, if Palestine becomes a nation state, they will, all the military, all the missiles, all the tanks, all the influence, all the political influence will be welcomed by whatever government is going to be in Palestine at that time. Also, the ideal, it's true that if you go to Jordan and into Egypt and you ask people, they're very much Israeli, unlike many of their leaders. Many of them are very much in favor of annihilating the Israeli state. However, they have strong governments that have a full control of their population, and the capacity or the willingness to sacrifice their way of life for destroying Israel is not as much as the Palestinian people. Like, even though they might support the Palestinian people attacking Israel, they do not want to live like that. But many Palestinians are accepting that way of life, accepting poverty, accepting death, accepting misery, as long as they're in opposition to Israel and they want to see Israel being annihilated. We are completely dealing with a different beast here when it comes to Gaza and West Bank. When it comes to, so I'm not sure and even if we could get there, do you agree that right now, if we have let's say that, sure, let's make it so that it's like Jordan and Egypt at some point. Today, if we have a two-state solution right now, today, that leader that you're mentioning does not exist. A leader that could go in Palestine and be like, hey guys, let's not be this crazy. How about that? And people are like, sure, let's try a different method. We don't have that in Palestine right now. So we cannot have a two-state solution. Do you agree?
I think there are lots of challenges on the road to a two-state solution. I think it is correct to say that the Palestinian Authority don't have the authority that you are alluding to, and that it would be quite hard for them to shut down. If people in the West Bank were having a movement maybe towards Hamas. I mean, there are multiple movements on the ground in the West Bank, like Lion's Den, right? That are there, and there are militant groups. So the Palestinian Authority has lots of difficulties in imposing what it wants, and I think the Palestinian Authority itself doesn't really go far enough in terms of what it would need to do to secure itself.
But so you agree?
A real state. I think there are serious logistical issues, ideological, and just practical issues that make it extremely difficult to have a two-state solution today. But I believe in what's right and what's wrong, and my belief in self-determination is very strong. And I don't think that the self-determination of the Palestinian people can ultimately be denied. I think in the end there will be a two-state solution, and I accept that there are going to be all sorts of security challenges. There are security challenges with every new state, whether that we're talking about South Sudan, whether we're talking about East Timor, whether we're talking about the British independence, Indian independence from Britain, whether we're talking about apartheid after South Africa, or whether we're talking about American independence from Britain, right? There's always going to be security challenges when there's a new state.
But we're not talking about a security, just like a small, this is going to be a security issue, okay? We're not talking about this is going to be a security threat to some Israelis. We're talking about the potential annihilation of Israel and the greatest act of genocide in the past 100 years, bigger even than in World War II. We're talking about opening the door to that potentiality. Okay, I also believe in the right to self-determination. But do you agree that the right to life comes before the right to self-determination? The right to life takes a priority.
it's quite. I mean, I think the right to life is one of the most fundamental human rights. It's a bit of a tricky one, like saying which right takes precedence over the other. I think ultimately the right to life is about as fundamental as it gets. Right, the right to life. Right. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So
I suppose.
So
you could say that self-determination comes under liberty and the pursuit of happiness more than it does life. But I think that there will be a Palestinian state, and I think that the real challenge is getting the conditions right so that there is effective leadership to prevent the potential disaster you're talking about.
So the conditions are not right now. So now the two.
I suppose one of the problems is you can kind of dilly-dally and say the conditions are not right now. Are the conditions ever going to be perfect? Probably not. I think ultimately Palestine's birth as a state is going to happen in imperfect conditions.
So for the sake of self-determination, we should open the door to potentially destroying Israel. I don't think.
Not at all.
Well, that's what will happen. If Palestine becomes a nation state today, we're threatening Israel's existence. So even if we are,
I do have doubts about that. I have really major concerns about what the Islamic Republic of Iran wants to do, and what Hamas want to do. Right? I don't want that. I'm strongly, vitriolically opposed to Hamas and to the Islamic Republic of Iran. I don't want that.
I know.
I love the Jewish people as much as I love anyone else. I think the Jewish people deserve to live. I think that Jewish people should be as protected as any other human being on the planet Earth. But
these are the things that we wish. But then we have to also deal with what the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground. Yes, I also wish I share the same dream with you, okay? And we could keep dreaming here together, and that's beautiful, right? I want Israel to be a prosperous, secure, safe nation state, and I also want that for Palestine. I want Palestine to be a prosperous, safe nation state, okay? But these are the things that we want. But let's see the things that we can have, okay? That's the world of the things that we love to have, but now we live in a world of the things that we can have. In the world of the things that we can have, if Palestine today becomes a nation state, that is the greatest threat to the existence of Israel ever since its inception.
I think that there are potentially greater threats, and I think that the real threat to Israel is an Iranian nuclear weapon. I think that's the real threat. The Palestinians being taken over again by a group like Hamas, who wants to wage jihad against Israel. That is a threat to Israelis. It's also a tremendous threat to Palestinians. Let's be honest.
So here's the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Palestinian threats to Israel are in the same thing. They're connected with each other. Okay,
they are connected with each other.
The Islamic Republic will effectively have a nuclear weapon at some point, in effect. Okay, so that's a reality that we have to deal with at some point. Okay, unless the people of Iran manage to topple the regime before that happens.
That should be what we support. That should be what we support. Yes. We should support the people of Iran.
Yes, that's one of the main ways to fight. That's one of the main ways to fight for Israel, is actually to support for the people of Iran against the regime. That's one of the most
people. And for the interest of the Palestinian people.
Yes, exactly. Because I completely agree with that. Okay, so we could talk about. I've been talking about that for ages on this channel. But what I'm saying is that if the Islamic Republic of Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they're not going to use it against Israel, because nuclear weapons are there for not using. It's a deterring tool, right? But if the Islamic Republic, but not that that's not a threat to Israel, that would be devastating for Israel without using it, because. What happened? Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought I got disconnected for a second. Because if the Islamic Republic has nuclear weapons, that means that it's going to be a lot more aggressive when it comes to support for terrorist groups, because it now acts with the knowledge that no regime in the world is going to come and try to topple it. It will be a lot more brazen, a lot more confident, a lot more aggressive when it comes to supporting groups like Hamas and Hezbollah with the nuclear weapons. So
Yes.
the Islamic Republic having nuclear weapons will mean more Hamas and more Hezbollah and more Islamic Jihad. Again, it will bring things back. The threat to Israel will still come directly from its borders. And the Islamic Republic of Iran is now trying to control Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, so that it has a complete direct, land support for Israel's enemies right at its borders, and it's doing that very effectively right now. If Palestine becomes, remember, Iran, the Islamic Republic in Iran controls Iraq's politics. It controls Iraq's government. It has a lot of impact in Syria and also in Lebanon. It controls Hezbollah, which is the biggest political party in Lebanon. Now imagine if Palestine is now an independent nation state and it's looking for support and allies, and the Islamic Republic is right there to build its arsenal as much as it needs to, right? And with all that landmass being in control of the Islamic Republic, you have just gifted the Islamic Republic its most effective tool to challenge Israel. I mean, why would we gift the Islamic Republic?
Let's get serious about challenging the Islamic Republic of Iran and challenging their imperialism and their domination over large parts of the Middle East, right? The interests of people with liberal views and people with secularist views worldwide is at stake, right? Our freedom is at stake if we do not stand up for ourselves against these tyrannical people in Iran.
Yes, but we cannot have a Palestine as a nation state until you remove the Islamic Republic. Like, as long as you have the Islamic Republic in power, maybe work on that first before you work on a Palestine as a nation state.
I think
you need to get rid of.
I think, as you suggest, they're all kind of connected, right? And
right. But one has to come before the other one. As long as
secularization and moderation for Palestinian voices is an important prelude. Rejecting, as a Palestinian, I reject the overtures of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I reject their ideology. I don't want their help. I don't want them in Palestine. They will bring Palestine nothing but misery. So me saying that is me pushing back against them. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm
doing. Well, thank you so much for doing. And guys, please support John Aziz, because we need voices like him as a Palestinian. We need more Palestinians like John Aziz. And again, I will put his Twitter in the live chat as well, because yes, we all have to support the Palestinians who are doing this, so that we could make them a bigger part of that. We could make them turn them from a minority of the Palestinians who are saying that to a majority, hopefully one day. But again, I'm saying this is like a work in progress. We have to take one. Yeah, so, but I'm saying we're not ready for a nation state of Palestine today, at least today. You can't
climb a mountain with one step. You have to take multiple different steps to get to the top of the mountain. And I think that the Islamic Republic of Iran is a terrible threat to Palestinians, to Palestinian freedom.
Yes.
Right. That's my position. And that's what I'm vociferous in opposing their influence in Palestine and across the Middle East. I think that if Palestinians want our freedom, we should be hand in hand with the people of Iran against their tyrannical rulers, who not only threaten the people in Iran, but also threaten us and are empowering the most insidious and horrific elements in our own society in Palestine to wage war, wage jihad against Israel endlessly, continuously.
Right. Yeah, in fact, let me agree with you before I already took a lot of your time. Guys, please make sure you like the stream so more people see this show. Thank you so much. And leave a comment after the show is over. But I agree with you. I think like the Islamic Republic of Iran has been a bigger curse upon the Palestinian people than even what it has been to Israeli people. Because the Islamic Republic needs Palestinian suffering. It needs Palestinian death. It's thirsty for Palestinian blood, because that's its weapon. Palestinian suffering is the soft power of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the Sunni world, because Shia ideology, because of its Shia ideology not being enough for it to be able to have influence in the Sunni Islamic world, it needs this Palestinian people to suffer so that it could use their suffering as a way to promote its ideology in the Sunni world and in Europe and in North America. And it's been doing that very effectively. In fact, they say that they are investing in the suffering. They don't even hide this. They say that it's a blessing that Palestinian people are suffering. They say that this is they celebrate their martyrdom. They think this is they claim they come on TV in Iran on national TV. They say like the best place to be right now is in Gaza. The happiest people in the world are the people in Gaza who are dying, who are being blessed by martyrdom. They cry that they wish that they were in Gaza and experiencing the same suffering. And they promote that suffering because they need that suffering. They're using Palestinian. So when they say that they're pro-Palestinian, they mean they're pro-Palestinian death and suffering. They're not pro-Palestinian prosperity, peace, and security. They think Islam grows when Muslims suffer. And they see Muslim suffering as a blessing to the Muslim community. So when that's their ideology, they promote policies that brings more destruction and more misery to these Muslims. And the Palestinian people are being used. The Palestinian people are being weaponized. Their blood is being weaponized for the ambitions of creating a global imamate. I mean, for Sunnis it's caliphate, but for Shias it's imamate. That's what they're being used for. They're being used as a way to promote more anti-imperial, what they call anti-imperialism. And when they say anti-imperialism, they're talking anti-liberal values. They're talking what it actually means is anti these standards and the philosophy and the methodology that has made the world such a more peaceful, prosperous, and happy place. That's what they're against. They're against this when they're acting against Israel because they think Israel is an agent of this global liberal order. And this global liberal order is what all of us depend on to live happy, peaceful lives. So when they're challenging Israel, they're challenging you because they see Israel as an extension of that, as your way of life, as your rights and freedoms that all of us enjoy. Anyways, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm going to read a super chat and I'm going to let you say the final words. EF is saying, thank you, John, for coming and for your determination and commitment to peaceful existence, hoping for better days. And thank you, Armin, as always, for great streams. And this is EF from Israel. So this is beautiful to see an Israeli saying that to a Palestinian. And I hope we could get some people, because I have people who are radical on the other side who think like, oh, all Palestinians are this. Again, when I say most Palestinians are like that, this is not something that I like. I'm just dealing with polls and data, okay? I don't want to generalize. I know even if Palestinians that have your view are a minority, they're an important minority because it should give us hope. I'm glad that, it's good to have hope. I know I was the voice of pessimism on this channel, but I'm just trying to push back against what you're saying. But I do see the value of hope. And even if the Palestinians who have your view are a minority, they're an important minority, and it shows us a potential. It shows us a potential for them to be a majority one day. So it shows that it's possible. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak. I think we are. Look, Palestinians generally are in quite a dark place, and have been for a long time. And to some extent, it seems like things are only getting darker. And I think October the 7th was a huge outpouring of the darkness of the ideology of Hamas. I think that we have to find opportunities to go in a better direction. I think that in the long run, peaceful coexistence and compassion for both sides and economic interdependence is probably the way to go. And it's in some ways it's probably inevitable because it's so beneficial to both sides. Only a very select few people really benefit from the current status quo, which ensures, essentially the Palestinians are going to have a horrible time, and Israelis too. They're cut off from most of the Middle East, right? From a lot of the countries in the Middle East they'd like to be able to go to. I think peace and normalization and all of those things, economic interdependence are things that we need to build towards, and we will build towards. And I strongly believe in taking this path, and I just want to urge everyone who believes in liberal values, in humanism, in peace, in the value of every human life, to please try and come on this journey with me and try and build towards coexistence and peace and humanity.
Okay, well, that was very powerful. I hope it works. And guys, if you want to be part of making those voices be heard by more people, once again, I share John's Twitter account, and I will make sure that it's in the description as well. After the show is over, I'll make sure that it's at that very close to the top of the description, so for people to go. What do you share on your Twitter account? You share your articles, you share your views. What else?
A lot of the time, my Twitter account is just me reacting to news. It's me giving my spin on the most current news stories and things that I see in other people's stream. But it's important to stay up to date with what's going on both in Israel and in Palestine, and to try and understand the broader picture. So that's really what I use it for on a daily day-to-day basis, is sharing. Sharing my opinion and sharing my takes, and trying to support people with similar views to me. Any Palestinians or Israelis who want to see us building towards coexistence and peace between two nations, I think those are the people I'm trying to platform, trying to share their views, and trying to uplift.
Oh, well, that's amazing. I thank you so much for what you're doing. It's very much needed. And again, thank you so much again for coming to the show.
I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, well, thank you. Awesome. Okay, well, just say I'll end the stream. Guys, make sure nobody's allowed to leave without liking the stream. So do that before you go. And after the show is over, please leave a comment on the comment section. And again, subscribe. I know I'm seeing a lot of people are watching this on Twitter. 300 people are watching this on Twitter. So if you're watching us on Twitter, make sure you come on YouTube and subscribe to Atheist Republic YouTube channel, because that's where all the fun in the live chat is happening. All right, guys, till next stream. Bye.
Take care.